Deion Sanders watched as headlines turned his son into a caricature. Just a name, they said. Just a brand. But Shedeur Sanders quietly dismantled every one of those assumptions, not with press tours or flashy statements, but by showing up early, prepared, and silent. That's what Joe Burrow saw. Not the last name, not the college tape. He saw a quarterback standing inside a collapsing pocket against the Bengals' rush, running the huddle like it was his third season, not his.
If you're into the real story and all the messy twists they don't show on highlight reels, go ahead and subscribe. And if you're sticking around to see how this Browns QB chaos plays out, you should definitely be subscribed.
Burrow's comments weren't generous. They were deeply personal. He saw a mirror, and what he reflected was a quarterback who leads with precision, not performance. Cleveland's chaotic offense is slowly orienting itself around Sanders' timing and mental tempo. Stefanski isn't the only one noticing. The locker room is too. The quarterback who once carried his father's name is now commanding attention for entirely different reasons. Quiet, professional dominance. He's navigating systemic adversity, building trust on execution alone, and staying out of the noise. This isn't a storyline about lineage anymore. It's about someone redefining what inherited greatness should look like. You know, when Joe Burrow speaks, it's because he means it. He's not the type to throw around compliments just to be nice. So when Burrow made headlines for praising Shedeur Sanders, it wasn't just a nice moment. It was a line in the sand, a signal to the entire league that something deeper is happening beneath the surface. And the weight of that moment? It's heavy. This wasn't about flash. This wasn't about numbers. It wasn't about media spin or who had the best touchdown pass of the game. It was about Sanders' poise, his mental control, his ability to stand in the pocket, diagnose a defense, and make the right read. Not the glamorous one, not the desperate one, but the one that keeps the offense alive. That's what Burrow saw. That's what made him speak up. And look, this came after a high-pressure, high-stakes matchup, Browns versus Bengals. There were no soft reps, no training wheels. Just real football, real speed, real decisions that had to be made in real time. And Sanders handled it like he'd been there before. Like the pocket wasn't collapsing. Like the eyes of critics weren't burning holes into his helmet. For Burrow, that wasn't just impressive. It was familiar. Because this is a guy who knows the grind. He didn't walk into a Super Bowl contender. He built one. He understands what it takes to walk into dysfunction and turn it into structure. So when he watched Sanders hold his own, and more importantly, hold his composure, he didn't see a rookie. He saw someone who already gets it. Someone who already operates on the mental level required to actually last in this league. And you can't fake that. It's not about charisma or motivational speeches. Sanders isn't trying to be a brand. He's not using his last name to generate headlines. He's doing it the hard way, through film sessions, game tape, and consistency. Every teammate knows what they're getting from him. Not because he tells them, but because he shows them. Every day. And it's not lost on anyone how unusual that is for a rookie. Let alone a fifth-round rookie. Because let's be honest, fifth-round quarterbacks aren't supposed to be talked about like this. They're usually insurance policies. They get reps in garbage time. They're expected to wait their turn and maybe get a look in 3 years. But Sanders never subscribed to that narrative. He walked into Cleveland, ignored the noise, and just started operating like a leader. And you know what? People followed. Veterans don't care about draft slots. They care about trust. Can you run the huddle? Do you know the playbook? Are you holding yourself accountable? Can you take correction without ego? Those are the things that matter in a locker room. And Sanders checked every box, not with some viral moment, but with how he moved, how he prepared, how he reacted under pressure. That's the leadership Burrow called out. That's what made it different. This wasn't a cosign rooted in highlight reels. It was one rooted in repetition, in process, in watching a guy not just play the position, but own it. And Sanders did all that with obstacles most quarterbacks don't even face until year 3. An inconsistent offensive line? Check. A run game that hasn't clicked? Check. Receivers still building chemistry? Also check. And through all of that, Sanders didn't complain. didn't deflect. He just kept getting better, tightened his timing, made smarter throws, improved his TD to INT ratio, and did it all without needing applause. That's why Burrow's praise mattered so much, because it reframed the conversation. It took the spotlight off Sanders' bloodline and put it on his blueprint. Because, yeah, he's Deion's son, but his game? That's all him. The NFL has always had this habit of reducing players to their narratives. And for Sanders, the dominant one was inherited fame. Before he even threw a pass, he was framed as the kid with the famous dad. But Burrow didn't see that. He saw an operator, a technician, a quarterback doing the hard, boring, detailed work that separates real leaders from temporary ones. And there's no PR team in the world that can manufacture that kind of validation. What makes this moment even more meaningful is how Sanders has handled all of it. He hasn't tried to fight the Deion's son label with press conferences or dramatic interviews. He's just chosen to outperform it. He lets the film speak. He lets his preparation speak. He lets the respect from his teammates speak. Because in his mind, legitimacy isn't built with words. It's built in the meeting rooms and the practice field. His coaches get it. Kevin Stefanski didn't hold back when talking about Sanders' impact. He's been open about how coachable he is, how respected he is, how much influence he's having structurally on the offense. Not just running plays, shaping the offense. That's rare, especially in Cleveland, where the quarterback situation has been a revolving door for years. And when you zoom out, Sanders' emergence isn't just a personal triumph. It's a systemic critique. It challenges how the league scouts, how it prioritizes hype, and how it often ignores the indicators that really matter, like composure, processing speed, and error recovery. Because Sanders is proving week after week that those things win games. Maybe not always on the scoreboard, but in the long game, in culture, trust, and long-term viability, that's everything. And let's talk about that motto. Dig one, ditch, better dig two. That's not a marketing slogan. It's a worldview. It's a declaration that mastery isn't immediate. It's dug out, slowly, carefully, consistently. That every rep is part of a bigger excavation. That the work beneath the surface matters more than whatever's trending that week. It's almost poetic how anti-attention his entire approach is. In a league built on noise, Sanders is building with silence. No shortcuts, no theatrics, just slow, methodical, behavior-based leadership. And that's what's turning heads. So yeah, Joe Burrow's words weren't just nice to hear. They were disruptive. Because when a guy like that vouches for you, not as a peer, but as an equal, it changes everything. It forces people to look again, to reevaluate, to recognize that Sanders isn't just holding it down. He's building something. And the league has to pay attention now. Because this isn't a Cinderella run. It's not a hot start. It's a paradigm shift. A reminder that you don't need a Heisman or a viral post to be taken seriously. You just need proof. And Sanders has plenty. So if you've been watching this unfold quietly, nodding along like, yep, I see it too, don't be shy. Like this video. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Do you think the league is finally waking up to what real leadership looks like? Or is Sanders still being underrated? And if you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? This is the kind of story we live for. The kind that cuts through the noise and shows us what real growth looks like. Silent, steady, and impossible to ignore. What makes this all the more compelling is how unbothered Shedeur Sanders is by the spotlight he didn't chase. The attention finds him, but he never feeds it. There's no post-game theatrics, no social media parades, no curated image management. He doesn't care about perception. He cares about execution. And you can tell. The discipline shows up in every snap, every progression, every in-game adjustment that most rookies wouldn't dare attempt. That's exactly what Burrow recognized. He wasn't reacting to hype. He wasn't echoing talking points. He was responding to something real, a behavioral pattern, a quarterback doing the actual job in one of the hardest roles under real NFL pressure, and doing it like it's nothing. That level of maturity is jarring, especially from a rookie, with a last name that comes with its own gravitational pull. Most players in Shedeur's shoes would be tempted to use the Deion Sanders connection, to let the shine do some of the heavy lifting. But Shedeur made a conscious choice to go the other way, to let his name be the least interesting thing about him. And in a league where attention is currency, that's a radical move. He's forcing people to look at what actually matters. The tape, the footwork, the timing, the leadership in the locker room. And when you strip away the noise and just watch the quarterbacking, it's all there. Control tempo, pocket management, quick processing, smart decisions. That's why Burrow's praise hit so hard, because it came from someone who's been in the fire, who understands how rare it is to see a young QB thrive on those intangible levels. On poise, not panic. On pacing, not panic buttons. Burrow didn't just tip his cap. He recalibrated the conversation. Because when a guy who's led his team to the Super Bowl says this rookie has the traits that matter, that's not a headline. That's an indictment of every scouting report that dismissed Sanders as Deion's kid or a developmental project. It's a wake-up call, and the timing couldn't be more poetic. This isn't a league known for patience. Rookie quarterbacks are expected to either become stars instantly or fade quietly. But Sanders isn't playing either of those roles. He's introducing a new archetype, one where legacy doesn't define you, and where leadership is built from the ground up. He's not dragging the past behind him. He's building something new, and his teammates know it. You see it in the way the line responds to him, in how the play calling evolves around his strengths, in the way the team lets him lead, not just manage. That's not symbolic. That's structural change. It's foundational. It's what turns unstable franchises into serious contenders. Not in one season, but in mindset, in repetition, in how people start preparing when they believe in the guy under center. And Shedeur is quietly, relentlessly earning that belief. He's not selling potential. He's delivering proof. Even coaches who've been through years of roster turnover are pointing to him as a culture anchor. Kevin Stefanski didn't just say Sanders is playing well. He called out his coachability, his communication, his daily presence in shaping Cleveland's offensive identity. That's a major statement, because it shifts the story from rookie QB to offensive leader. And again, this is all happening without the benefit of ideal conditions. The line has holes. The run game is still inconsistent. The receivers are still sinking. It's a system still being formed around him. And yet, he's already the one holding it together. Let that sink in. A rookie, from the 5th round, walking into that situation and becoming the emotional and strategic core of the offense. Not with speeches, not with antics, but with quiet, verifiable leadership. That's the kind of stuff you can't measure at a combine. You have to see it on the field. And clearly Burrow saw it. That's why this moment matters more than a trending quote. It's peer-to-peer acknowledgement. It's one franchise quarterback saying, "This guy doesn't just get it, he has it." And it's not just a win for Sanders. It's a win for a new way of thinking about talent, about leadership, about how we assess readiness. Because the league has long conflated visibility with viability. If you're loud, confident, and come from a well-known program, you get the benefit of the doubt. But if you're quieter, more methodical, and don't play the media game, you get buried in the depth chart. That's been the model. Shedeur Sanders is flipping that script. Not by complaining about it, but by outperforming it. That's what Burrow responded to. That's what's finally starting to cut through. And if you've been paying attention, you've probably noticed the shift too. You've probably seen the way teammates look at Sanders in the huddle. The trust, the clarity, the stability he brings. That's not an accident. That's the result of hours in the film room, of knowing the playbook better than anyone, of being the first one in, the last one out, of correcting mistakes with humility, not excuses. This is what long-term quarterbacking looks like. And it's not always loud. Sometimes it's surgical. Sometimes it's the guy who says less and delivers more. That's Shedeur. And this league is starting to recognize it, not because of what he says, but because of what people like Burrow are starting to say about him. This wasn't a passing compliment. This was a torch-passing moment. A shift in tone from wait and see to he's already here. So the next time someone tries to reduce Shedeur Sanders to a name or a narrative, point to this. Point to Joe Burrow. Point to the growth, the trust, the leadership, the actual proof. Because the story now isn't can Sanders be great. It's how did everyone miss how ready he already was? And it's only just beginning. And here's the part that no one wants to admit, but everyone knows deep down. If Shedeur Sanders wasn't Deion's son, if he didn't carry that surname, we'd probably be talking about him a lot more, not less. Because it's not that the name gave him a shortcut. It gave him a target, a narrative that came preloaded with expectations, assumptions, and, let's be honest, cynicism. Every snap he's taken since college has been watched with a microscope tilted by skepticism. Not is he good, but is he only here because of his dad? That's why Joe Burrow's public recognition hit like a thunderclap. Because Burrow didn't just see through the noise. He cut through it. No agenda. No media-friendly fluff. Just a peer saying, he's not good because of who his father is. He's good because of what he does on that field. And that recalibration is everything. Because in the NFL, respect from a veteran, especially a quarterback, can shift perception faster than a SportsCenter segment ever could. And when it comes from someone as respected, methodical, and famously no-nonsense as Burrow, it becomes gospel. It tells the league, you don't have to like the story, but you better respect the work. And Sanders' work? It's becoming impossible to ignore. Let's talk about that fifth-round draft status again. Because it bears repeating. Quarterbacks taken that late are not expected to start. They're certainly not expected to lead. They're roster fillers, scout team arms, long shots. But Sanders didn't ask for expectations. He asked for a playbook, and he buried himself in it. He didn't lobby for media narratives. He earned the respect of his locker room. And he didn't posture as a leader. He functioned as one. Because true leadership in this league? It's not who speaks the loudest. It's who executes the cleanest. Who makes others better. Who stays emotionally level when the pressure dials up. That's what coaches and players are seeing in Sanders. That's what Burrow was pointing to. And if you think this is just about football, you're missing the bigger picture. This is about a cultural shift in the NFL, about what kinds of players get taken seriously. It's about whether the league is finally ready to move past style over substance. Whether it can value emotional intelligence and mental stamina the same way it does vertical leap or 40-yard dash time. Sanders is proving that those quiet, unquantifiable traits, they're foundational, not optional. He doesn't need a media campaign because the locker room is his campaign. His teammates are his testimony. His coaches are his credibility. And now, Burrow is his microphone, amplifying the part of the story the public hasn't been paying attention to. And still, Sanders says nothing. No, I told you so. No victory lap. Just more work, more tape, more leadership that doesn't ask to be noticed. It demands it by default. That's why so many of his teammates, not just coaches, teammates, have come forward to praise him. They're not doing it because it helps their brand. They're doing it because it helps their team. Because it helps them. When your quarterback shows up early, knows the scheme cold, and handles pressure without crumbling, it creates a ripple effect. It lets everyone else do their job better. And that's the thing people are finally realizing. Sanders isn't just functioning within the system. He's raising it. Veteran receivers are syncing their routes to his cadence. Linemen are adjusting protections based on his pre-snap reads. That doesn't happen unless the trust is earned. And that kind of trust? It doesn't come from a name. It comes from performance, from consistency, from clarity in chaos. And yes, we're still talking about a rookie. So when Burrow saw that composure under fire, when he saw Sanders manage the tempo, process the defense, and move the offense with zero panic, it felt familiar. Because Burrow's been there. He knows the cost of leadership in a broken system. He knows the toll of carrying more responsibility than your years suggest you should. So what he offered wasn't a compliment, it was a salute. And that salute doesn't just validate Sanders. It challenges the league. It asks every scout, every GM, every analyst who doubted Sanders' readiness, what exactly were you looking for? Because if leadership is behavior and quarterbacking is cognitive warfare, then Sanders is already playing chess, not checkers. Not mad highlights. Actual, high-speed NFL chess. And he's not flinching. And the result? The Browns' offense has a pulse. It has direction. It has a foundation being laid. Not with headlines, but with decisions. Pre-snap, mid-play, post-game. All of it flows through a guy most teams didn't think was ready. How ready does he look now? So let's recap what's happening in real time. You've got a rookie quarterback who was drafted late. He inherited a broken system. He's playing behind a shaky O-line with an inconsistent run game and receivers still learning the scheme. And he's the one stabilizing it. He's the one changing the way the offense communicates, prepares, and operates. And now, one of the league's elite quarterbacks, who built his own reputation on discipline and grit, goes out of his way to publicly say, "This guy is for real." That's not just a compliment. That's a passing of a torch. So where does this go from here? Well, if the NFL is paying attention, and Burrow just made sure they are, then it goes toward a new understanding of what greatness looks like. That it's not always flashy. That it doesn't always arrive with a Heisman and a Netflix documentary. Sometimes it arrives early to meetings. It knows the game plan better than the OC. It corrects teammates without ego. It shows up when it's hard. And it never, ever asks for a spotlight. Shedeur Sanders is giving the NFL a case study in what quiet excellence looks like. What leadership that's earned, not branded, can do to a team's culture. And Burrow's praise just stamped that into the league's consciousness. So if you've been paying attention from the start, if you've seen the way this kid operates, if you've tracked the way he's shifted from storyline to cornerstone, now's the time to talk about it. Drop a comment. Let it be known. Share it with a friend who still thinks he's just Dion's kid. Like the video if you've been watching the rise happen in real time. And subscribe. Because if the league is changing its lens on quarterbacking, we're going to keep breaking it all down, from the film room to the field. Because Shedeur Sanders didn't ask to change the narrative. He just made it undeniable. One decision at a time.